Tina, welcome to moneyHOP Q&A session. Great to have you over here. Today we are
Thank you so
talking
much.
about careers abroad. So the first thing when we think about job that comes to our mind is interview. And different nations would be having a different style of conversation as a whole. Like the UK style is different, the US style is different, the Canada style is different. So how can students adopt to that particular communication style when they're attending an interview?
That's actually a very good question and something that I get asked a lot because these days there's a bit of a blur. If you look at the communication techniques, if we look at certain countries like US or Canada, for example, those countries, they're very direct, right? They don't expect you to just give them answers that are numbers or based on data that you've collected. They want to understand your reasoning, right? They want to understand and see how much you have learned from your experience and the opinions that you have. So, for example, in India, it's very common to give answers like, okay, I managed a team or I did something for this project and it led to this result, right? But in countries like US or Canada, they expect you to give a bit more detail about your experience, right? For example, instead of just saying I led a team, they expect you to say you led a team of how many people and what were the challenges that you faced? How was your experience about it? For example, if you transitioned into a new software for your company, how did you lead it? Right? So they expect you to know those things because you've worked and you have to imbibe your whole career in that sense that you can communicate about it. So that's the fine line between, I'd say, countries like India, China, who are a bit more, um, I'd say, hierarchy based, you know? So they expect you to give that respect, and somewhere that leads to a little bit more formality rather than in US and Canada, where they expect you to talk a bit more about your experience in general. So, yeah, that's one thing that should be kept in mind, I feel.
So when I Googled about interviews abroad, a term, acronym like struck my mind, and it is STAR, the STAR method of answering questions. So can you
Yeah.
elaborate on that?
Yeah, that's actually a great method. It helps you answer your interview questions in a very structured manner. So, STAR basically stands for situation, task, action, and then result. Um, Let me give you an example of a situation. So, for example, you get a question like, tell me about a time that you worked under pressure, right? So, you can start off by the S, which is the situation. So you talk about the situation. For example, there was an event at the company and a product was launching, and last moment turns out that you were two people short. So that's the situation. The task would talk about what was it that was your responsibility. So I would say that my task was to ensure that we launched um, without compromising the quality. Okay. So that would be my task. I would talk about that. Then I would follow it up with the action that I took. So I would talk about how I managed to delegate the work in a way that didn't compromise on the quality, and it made sure that the effect of not having those two people didn't come or didn't stand in the way of the launch, right? That's the action. And then you end it with the result, which is what actually happened. Did you end up launching on time or not? And how was the client's feedback? So this way, you're talking about a problem, but in a way that's structured and it follows and gives your interviewer some insight about how you would handle such situations. So that's actually a very excellent way of answering any questions in the interview.
Wow, that's a great way of structuring thoughts. Now,
Yeah.
coming to the third question, as you know, this conversation is for Indian students abroad, and for most of them, English is not their first language; it's their second language, and there could be a lot of concerns when it comes to talking in second language. They may not sound confident as they do in their first language, right? So, how can students sound more confident when they are talking in English abroad, especially for interviews?
Yeah, of course. And especially when someone is very nervous, because I'm sure when you're giving an interview, you're extremely nervous. You have all the answers prepared and you just want to let it out quickly. Like, sometimes the funniest thing that happens is the interviewer hasn't even finished asking the question and you're ready with the answer. Like you're already starting, right? That shows nervousness, that shows anxiousness, actually. So my biggest tip for this is that silence is your friend. Fluency isn't about big words, it's actually about the flow of the conversation. And like I said, so sometimes we get scared that if we're silent and now the interviewer is also silent, something has gone wrong. But that's not the case. You have to learn to sit in silence, take meaningful pauses between your sentences, and there is nothing wrong in taking a few minutes to answer. Before you answer, you can just take a few minutes, pause, use that star method so that you can structure the answers, and then you start talking. Biggest thing I would say is don't focus too much on using big words. A lot of times we tend to do that. We would focus on using certain words, and that might not really be required at the time. What is required is that you express yourself and your thoughts with clarity, which only comes with taking pauses and letting that silence kind of grow on you, and then you answer. So these three would be my biggest tips. Silence is your friend. No need for big words if it's not required. Smaller, structured sentences are the way to go, and definitely focus on the star method so that you know you're talking about a problem, how you solved it, and what was the result. That is all you need to focus on.
Now let's assume like a student starting the interview. So it is
Mhm.
very important that a small talk happens. It's important for the interviewer as well as the student.
Yeah.
So how can we do it successfully? Because I believe that is a very important part because that's where the thin slicing happens, that where the employer like forms the first impression about the student. So how can they do better in the small talk part?
Um, I think it's best to first start with changing the narrative. Like you said, that this is what the interviewer would get as a first impression, right? Now, if you would say this to a student, what do you think would the result be? Do you think they'd feel more confident, or would they get more nervous thinking, oh, that's like everything depends on this first impression?
I think like the student would, I think, yeah, the student may get a bit tensed. Obviously, they
Yeah,
will
a
get
bit
a bit
tensed.
tensed.
Exactly. So instead of thinking of it as a make or break deal, that this is it, this is going to be my first impression, in our heads, if we focus on it just being an icebreaker, knowing that the interviewer doesn't know anything about you, just like you don't know anything about them, it would make you think a little bit more groundedly, and you can start off by just reminding yourself that it's a small conversation in the beginning, and small talk is simply to break the ice. So you have to be friendly. You don't need to be overly friendly, but you need to be friendly enough to give them some idea about your personality, right? So you can maybe, the student can maybe prepare one or two lines beforehand about something that they did outside of work in the past week. For example, maybe they went to see a movie, right? So if you even say something like, it's been a very busy week, and I was really looking forward to this interview. And I went to see this movie as well. And even then, I was just a little bit nervous. I came back and I wanted to just prepare for this. It just gives the interviewer a little bit idea about the sort of person that you are. And it breaks the ice without you being too nervous about it or putting in too much importance on this one friendly question. So yeah, small talk is just about breaking the ice. That's it.
Now imagine like the student is not understanding a question being asked in the interview. It will
Mhm.
really make them nervous, right? How can we take care of the situation? Is it
Um,
okay to ask interviewer to repeat the question? Does it sound awkward, or is it a good practice? How can you explain about it?
That's actually a great question. Let me just think about it for a second. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. No worries.
Perfect. That's it. That answers it. So, this is exactly what happens in an interview. You get something, you're asked something, and then you might get a little bit nervous. You might freeze up for a second. And like I said, silence is your friend. And the way I asked you, I hope you didn't feel offended when I said that if I could just take a few seconds to think
No,
about
no,
it and
never.
answer.
Never. It was on spot.
Yeah, so that's exactly how the interviewer is. If you are on that table, if you are there in the interview, trust me, you're there for a reason. There's something that that interviewer saw in your profile, saw in your CV, and has called you for this interview, right? So it is completely okay, and they understand that you might be a little nervous, and more than that, they understand that you want to give the best answer possible. So for that, asking for a few minutes or seconds, or even to repeat a question is something that is totally normal. So we don't have to be scared about it at all. In fact, it helps. It shows that this interview is important to you and you want to give out your best. So you're willing to take a few moments to structure the answer and then give it to them.
Thanks a lot, Tina. A lot of insights has came up from this conversation. I am sure after listening to this episode, the students abroad are going to really feel confident when they attend interview. At the same time, the audience would love to know about you. So can you tell about yourself for the audience?
Sure. I'm really glad that you said that, and I truly hope that it helps because I do come across a lot of students who are very nervous, and especially before the exam, before they give the IELTS exam, they're just very anxious, thinking that okay, they're going to do something wrong, and this is where I come in. So I'm basically a coach for business communication, IELTS, as well as I consult people if they want to go study abroad. My journey started during sadly COVID times, and I was due to go to Australia for my master's, and I was there for half a year. But with COVID, everything was just a huge mess. And at that time, I remember getting so many students who um, just wanted to know how my experience was, and they started to ask me these questions. And I was in no way an expert at that time, but just because I wanted to help, I started to educate myself on this. And that's where it kind of just naturally led towards the consultation part. However, for teaching and for coaching in business communication and IELTS, I've been doing that for a while longer. And yeah, it just kind of blended together. And I have honestly enjoyed so far being, helping these students who are really nervous. And I was there at one point, so I really understand the struggle, how much it can affect you. And now that I'm working in a city like Dubai, which is a multinational place, you'll find people from everywhere here. It has only solidified my reason to help everyone else like that because it's worth it and everyone can do it. I mean, I just feel like if I can do it, I feel everyone has a good chance of doing it. So I just want to be of help, and whatever I learn, I want to be able to share it with them.
Thanks a lot, Tina. Great to have you over here.
Thank you so much. It was lovely speaking to you, and I really hope it helps some of them.